There's Pucky. Awesome. Right. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Good morning, Pucky. I'm Jack, and I have been conducting research with the topic Themes in Discerning Female Apostles. So let me put on my here we go, put on my slideshow. Okay, can everyone see the slideshow? Thumbs up? Yes, awesome. Okay.
Could you make it big, Jack? Sorry.
I thought I did. And
I think each person has some view options where you can fit it to your window.
I mean, it's not showing as it's not actually showing the slideshow. You have to choose from the beginning or from current slide. Click.
How's that?
Yes, that's it. Now that's it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks,
Thank you.
Arabella. Okay, so let's get going. Look, as you all know, I'm a movement catalyst and I've been doing this for 15 years and have not been remarkably successful in catalyzing movements, but having a lot of fun and learning a lot along the way. We have, I think, a few thousand unreached people groups left in my own country. We have 240, mostly Muslim unreached people groups. And if we think about it, what kind of person is the most likely to catalyze a movement among a UPG? And for me, clearly the answer is an apostle. Now, I come from a line of Pentecostal continuous theology that says, you know, apostles are still given, still around. But my question is, well, where the heck are they? And so I have been on a little journey for quite some time to figure that one out. So along the way, I came up with this definition of what I believe an apostle is. And this is backed up by my research as well. So a definition of an apostle is a woman or a man gifted by God to plant churches or catalyze movements of churches. They usually have signs following, they establish structures to get the job done, they suffer for their calling, they bring kingdom DNA into the culture where they are working, they train others to do what they do. So the difference between apostle and apostolic is that pretty much anyone can be apostolic. They can work like an apostle, but it doesn't mean they are one. So, you know, and I believe that the task of the apostle is to train people to work apostolically. But we really need to find those apostles first. And you can see in the photo, there's a photo of my favorite apostle there, right there. Anyway, and I've noticed over the years that apostles do come up and we do see them, but they are what I call wild olive tree apostles. So I come from South Australia. It's a dry place, and what's happened over the years is from the time of the first settlers, the birds have carried the seeds of a foreign species, the olive tree. They've taken them and they've just dropped those seeds everywhere, and we have olive trees popping up randomly, apparently, in different places because they've been dropped there. And that's what it appears like to me with apostles in this century, is that they kind of come up randomly and God grows them and they come up, and a wild, an uncultivated tree can be ugly. You know, it does not necessarily come clothed in humility. It does not, you know, it needs a good pruning here and there. But you know, but God grows them because He requires them, and the Holy Spirit stirs people. Yeah. So I'm trying to work out the process. Okay, we've got these wild things happening. How can I get a cultivated grove? See, Jesus did it, and Paul did it. These men, Jesus the apostle, Paul the apostle, they took people in groups of people and trained them to be apostles. So I'm looking for these way to discern people, and then find ways to breed them, processes to breed them to maturity, and then reproduce that to get a whole lot more people onto the field to get the job done. That's my dream. So for along that way, along my journey, my wife and I, we've done some worthy experiments and we've been growing in this along the way as well. So we had this incremental growth in understanding. So we came to the field at 42, but we had been called, and God had told us at 18 that we were apostles, that we would be apostles, and that we just kept on moving towards that goal. So at 42, we hit the ground. We had done our Bible school. We had done our cross-cultural training, which has prepared us in many ways. We had experience living in Asia. In many ways, we had good foundations, but we didn't have many skills, and we learned slowly and painfully how to do the job. And then we started interning people. We started interning, excuse me, primarily Westerners, and we could not take them further than we were ourselves in terms of becoming movement catalysts. Then over COVID, the Lord opened the way for us, and he gave us a new way of doing things, a new way of training people. And with local people, in an internship, in a 6-month period, we've produced several female apostles who are out there doing the job. Are they awesome apostles changing the nation? Well, not yet. They are young women, in their late 20s, early 30s, who are out there planting churches, performing signs and wonders, bringing kingdom DNA, and suffering quite a bit in the process to get the job done. So, like, I tend to think, wow, if I can identify these women, these men early, have them on the pathway early, they can have a whole life of fruitfulness rather than being an old guy like me coming in, and certainly producing fruit and having a lot of fun on the way. But, they can have a whole life doing it and not just give 20 or 30 years, but they could give, say, like Lorraine, like Viv, who've given 50, 60 years in service to the Lord and see much fruit. So my question for you then today is, for you to reflect on, is what is the Holy Spirit stirring up in you today regarding this topic? So, by the way, if you look on the photo here, the young lady on the left, that's Al, and she comes up a bit later on in the story where, Al as a young woman, she came to us to do an internship. She had just been with a very strange team in the far west of our nation, and she came to us to do an internship, and within 6 months, she is sharing gospel powerfully, and she's with significant signs of wonders. She healed a lame guy in the name of Jesus. Like, it's just awesome stuff. So I've been doing the Master of Arts in Transformational Urban Leadership, and for my thesis, I wanted to work on this whole developing apostles thing, and it's a very, very broad topic, and so I had to narrow it down to the first part, to the discerning of apostles, and particularly wanted to focus on discerning females. So I did a literature review, which we'll talk about in a moment. I did a survey of 101 World Outreach Mission partners, of which only 28 responded. And I did interviews with 11 apostles, which was probably one of the most awesome things I've done in my life, really. It was just amazing. So when it come to training apostles, Jesus had a model, and he used the prophetic company model. There was a rabbinic model in his culture of the day where the student would search for a rabbi to teach them, to train them. But Jesus used the prophetic company model where he went out and found a disciple and he said, "Follow me." And these people eventually, or some of them eventually, became apostles. And so they went through this process with Jesus where Jesus said, "Follow me," and it probably wouldn't have been completely clear follow him where or to do what, but they were willing, and over time they were faithful. And so Jesus prayed into that and sought the Lord. I believe, in that time he would be observing them, looking for leadership, and then at some point he got the nod from the Father, and the initial round were men, and he affirmed them as apostles. And in my literature review, I did a number of things, and one of those things is I looked at the case for female apostles based on the Apostle Junia, and look, I am predisposed. I am predisposed to believing in female apostles, and what I noted among the literature, there are people who are equally predisposed to not believing in female apostles. And so one of the key readings I did was Epp, and Epp opened my eyes that bias plays a significant part in the discussion of Junia as an apostle and as a woman. So anyway, the short of it is that at the end I came away confirmed in my own convictions that female apostles are a thing, that it's okay, it's biblically valid. I also took some of the data that I read along the way in that literature review. What were authors saying about discerning apostles? And frankly, there was not very much at all. So I actually ended up writing to a few authors, and I actually asked their opinions, and that was helpful. Got some more data there, and then I surveyed most of you, and look for explicit data. What are your recommendations and the author's recommendations in regard to things that we're looking for to discern apostle, particularly a young one? Like we got someone like Lorraine, who's been doing this for 100 years and has got 200 runs on the board. It's pretty easy to see, but for someone who's 18, 15, 25, it's not so clear. So what were those things? Anyway, I collated everything in nice little charts, and initially it was just a mess. Like I couldn't find more than much agreement on anyone about anything. So that was very, very challenging. And then people, I asked a question in a certain way, people would answer in a way different to what I expected, and trying to collate all that and make sense of it, that was a significant challenge, and probably the most significant weakness in this part of the research. So anyway, in the end, for that part of the research, I combined it all, and I came up with this list of themes in discerning female apostles. So what are we looking for? Well, there's themes around the demonstration of initiative and pioneering. They have, and that again, all these things would be age appropriate, experience appropriate as well. So it's not a simple formula. They have good foundations, and look, most of the data across the three types of data that I collected looked at good foundations, because if you have a house or a person on a faulty foundation, that's potential to go belly up, to go wrong, is fairly high. Anyway, these people are bold and gritty. They have a clear calling. Now, what I've experienced is that many young people have a clear calling to serve God, but they don't know where or how. And so part of the apostolic role is to push people in the right direction. They can teach, and they are teachable. They demonstrate leadership. They demonstrate creativity. They desire to plant churches. They're obedient to God rather than men. They have had mentoring along the way. Doesn't necessarily mean they've had apostolic mentoring, but they have been mentored by someone. They're already ministering to the lost in some ways, and they want to go where others won't, and they train others. So these, I mean, I looked at this list when it finally came together and went, well, this is awesome, and there is absolutely nothing there that I didn't already believe. And that's what has been really interesting with this research is that the surveys, and particularly the interviews and the reading, have helped me to articulate an existing process that has not been articulated. It's given me language and given me words for the things that are not there. And now, you know, we have some like statistical or numerical backup with these themes, the basic themes when you're looking for someone who is an apostle, particularly a female apostle. All right, I've been talking for quite some time. Any comments or questions so far?
I think this is really awesome, Jack. It's very challenging, but what I love is you've just made this very clear to somebody like me who has many ties, who are working, who could do apostolic stuff in Thailand, and how do I know which ones to really invest in? And this is just great and really, really helpful. And I can see that already in some of my leaders, and then some of them, no, definitely not. Here in Christchurch as well, in my church, I'm running a mission course over this weekend, and this whole concept of the validity of sending out apostles, identifying and then sending out apostles today is not really well understood or even received. But you've just, it's encouraging and helpful. Thank you.
Nice. Anybody else?
Jack, my question is, do you see differences in this list for a female apostle versus a budding male apostle?
Well, now that is a very good question. And look, overall, I came to the conclusion that the process is generic. The only difference is really in how they function. And so one author, one of the guy interviewed said, well, it's generic, but women will bring a feminine flair. Dr. Bill Smith said that men will try to lead based on their authority, where women, because of culture, will lead through influence. And they were really the only differences that came up at all. All right, shall we keep going then, guys? If there's any questions along the way, just chime in. It's feel free. All right, so I had another thought along the way, is that if I can figure out a model for growing apostles, I could then deduce themes in discerning apostles from that model. And so I acquired Viv Griggs' 4 Seasons chart, and Viv, you can see that I have flipped it upside down and it looks very unattractive. But it's you know, it will save me 10 hours of work on Canva trying to get it looking pretty. Anyway, so Viv has this wonderful little chart which is very handy for looking at the growth of people in churches, called the 4 Seasons chart, and that's the centerpieces of the diagram. Now I've added to that on the far left. Sadly, the writing has been cut off where it says this is Jesus' model, where he chose disciples observed them, prayed, chose the leaders out of them. All right, that's Jesus' model. On the far right is my model. And then in conversation with the apostles, what I worked at was it's really important to have good foundations. Now, I'm sure in Viv's mind, yes, we want good foundations. You know, let me put it like this. I was reading Prince. He's got this wonderful book about movement catalysts and the traits and competencies of the top 80% of movement catalysts. And the first trait is emotional stability. Well, I read that and I went, well, duh. That is an Australian term meaning, well, of course. Because, well, wouldn't we all assume that? Like, I really, you know, like I would not want to work with someone who's not emotionally stable. So I extrapolated that further to say, okay, well, we, you know, as a foundational issue, we want someone who's psychologically healthy. That's a good thing, don't you think? You know, I've worked with a leader who is not psychologically healthy, and it wasn't fun. Anyway, Viv also in the interview came up with the idea of family background indicates success, and I think that's very key as well. Lencioni talked about people being the ideal team player. Are they humble, hungry, and smart? Can they work together to achieve a goal? Because apostolic work is teamwork. It's not an individual work. And Weber from the World Outreach Leadership Program, he says, well, you know, we quite often he quotes Ralph Winter saying that we spent a lot of the time training the wrong people for the job. And so we need to be looking for leaders and people who demonstrate leadership through thinking and acting, not just being nice Christian people, because quite often we just recruit people on the basis of them being nice. Anyway, so these foundational things and building upon that a growth. So Viv's diagram there, you know, people pass through these child, youth, and parent stage. He bases that on 1 John chapter 2, you know, young men, children, and fathers, and going through four stages: security, commitment, quality, calling. So I put all that together, and it took me some time to feel comfortable that as a general model this would work, and then think, okay, well, what will I extrapolate from that in terms of themes that will help me discern apostles, particularly female ones? And I came up with 8. Again, it's the theme of good foundations. Then sorry, I didn't go back. Let me go back to the argument. Let me go back to that diagram because I've missed something important. You can see there is a thick black line around on the top and the bottom of the diagram. That actually goes right around the whole diagram, and that is at the bottom right hand corner. So we grow apostles in an apostolic environment. So anyway, good foundations. And when we want to discern apostolic people, we want to put them in an apostolic environment. A classroom is not an apostolic environment. And you know, among the incarnations of how I have done things not well here in my nation, we've done a lot of classroom stuff. And then in our last iteration of our internship program with the Indonesians, it's been very field focused. In the first program that we did, from which we got 3 female apostles. I mean, 3 for 3. I mean, there's God's grace to me right there. 3 for 3. We walked 150 kilometers together. We camped together. We lived together. We prayed for the sick together. We shared together. We read books together. And in this apostolic environment, boom, they appear. And this is really, I think, one of the key things I found in this time. Found is not the right word. Articulated, because I was already doing it, had seen the fruit for it, but did not have the language to share it. From that apostolic growth model, I've also seen that we really need the initiative of an apostolic mentor. you know, and by the grace of God, I've had a few. I've had Viv, I've had Dr. Bill Smith, I've had James Nyman, these men feeding into my life and pushing me along to grow in my own apostleship. And that's been, you know, been very, very helpful. But yeah, we really need those people to drag us into a network and work with us to grow us. So the apostle calls and invites, hey, come follow me. The apostle does the observation, he does the training, and growth is measurable. These are important themes along the way. That if there is an apostle, there will be growth, and that an apostle cannot become an apostle alone. Now, what was interesting as I interviewed the 11 apostles was their coyness about admitting they were one. I think 10 of the 11 were very coy, and one only admitted it after the interview. So what was going on there? And I was been meditating on that and asking the Lord, and what is it? It's part of it is poor role models that we've seen. Part of it is poor theology of what an apostle is and does, and you know, and this very Roman Catholic, the apostle is the ruler type thing that we have in our minds. And what I concluded is that what we're bumping up against is not necessarily poor theology or poor role models, but it is a negative apostolic archetype that lives culturally in our minds. Yeah, I think someone really needs to have a good look at that, because the vast majority of those apostles I interviewed, people have been in ministry for a long time, all very coy about it and very, very shy about it, and feeling, well, I don't really quite match up. Yeah, anyway, that's one of the things that I'll be recommending, is that there will be research on that archetype and its negative impact. Any questions on those 8 themes from the developing model for discerning and growing female apostles?
I think I'm just interested to know where the data is coming from. Is this now, it's broader than your literature review, so it's coming from the survey responses and the interviews as well. It's kind of, this is your complete findings.
Oh, yeah. So I've got three categories of themes. First category of themes came from the literature review, and and personal interaction with the authors, and also from the World Outreach surveys, and then a second row, which these I have devised by myself. These are my ideas only in relation to this diagram. Okay. So yeah. you might like them or dislike them. Viv, who made the initial diagram, may beg to differ as well, and that's fine. But there is more.
So this is
I'm enjoying it.
This is your interpretation of the themes that you picked up, Jack. Is that what you're saying? You're somehow trying to integrate those into a system.
Not yet.
Okay.
At the moment, I'm explaining the 3 categories of themes that I have. So this one here, in relation to the model, this is so I've got one category from the surveys and some explicit information I got from the interviewees, and then I've got the second category of themes is that I've devised from my own head in relation to this model of growing apostles that I've made here on this slide. And then I've got one more category as well, and I will integrate them at the end. Okay. Any more questions, comments? No. Okay, good. All right. So I interviewed 11 people, and I interviewed them because I knew them, not all of them very well. By the way, welcome, Ruby. I'm glad to see you here. And I didn't know all of them very well, but I knew that they were ministering apostolically. They were working like apostles. And what was really lovely is during the course of the interview or the next day, all of them fessed up to being apostles, including Dr. Bill Smith, which was a bit of a surprise. For those of you who know Bill, he's a bit of a dyed-in-the-wool Southern Baptist type, but he's an awesome old guy I love very much. Anyway, so I interviewed these 11 apostles. I had a bunch of questions, and they were quite long. Had to type them up, and then reading over them, I just went through and marked, okay, what are the things, the standout things? What are the themes that have come out as we've been discussing this? And I went through all of them, and I came out with a bunch of themes which are listed here. So the things that I kind of expected. Oops, sorry. Hold on. How do I get rid of that floating screen? Don't know. Okay.
We can't see it if it helps.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. All right. So the things that I kind of expected to appear were these. Firstly, foundations are important. There it is again. And there are signs and early indicators that someone could be apostolic. One person talked about a long-term identification from a child with the Apostle Paul. Another person talked about a dream they had of being out feeding people and seeing all these dark-skinned hands that she fed. Now, way in the future, that person actually had that vision physically come to pass. So there's these little signs and early indicators along the way. A number of people, I think 3 of the people had already started groups in. 4 people had started groups in high school. There were strong indicators along the way that these people are going to be powerful in serving God. The next theme is the problem of poor definitions and role models. And I already talked about the archetype issue, that because of poor understanding, people are very cautious about using the term. Related to that is the idea of cultural hurdles. So again, even in Pentecostal circles, if you call yourself an apostle, you have to be careful. Like even among charismatics, people are not excited about it. You're a threat, or you're a lunatic. That's one kind of cultural hurdle. Another one, particularly for women, is that, well, in some Christian circles, women just can't do anything. They're meant to be complimentary and stay at home and make babies. There's a whole bunch of these cultural hurdles that stop people moving to functioning as apostles, or in particularly into naming it. So I challenge people. Can you name it? And my friend Bill Smith did not name it the whole interview, and I had to write to him again and get it from him in writing. And he did. He was very kind about that. But I think there is a power in naming what God has given us, and I think with the naming, and not just naming it, but the saying, yeah, okay, not only do I name it, but I accept the gift that God has given me, and I will take responsibility for stewarding it. I think that's really important. But because of the whole cultural hurdles along the way, people are very reticent to do that, and that for me is a major concern. Next theme is that apostleship is a growing process. We don't have bim salabim abracadabra instant apostle. It's a growing process. Paul got saved on the Damascus Road, but he wasn't an apostle. He was a witness, and it was only some years later that he was confirmed as an apostle, although he was clearly working apostolically along the way. I was really interested in the next question on have you seen Jesus, because a number of authors are very firm that one of the qualifications for seeing Jesus, one of the qualifications for apostleship is seeing Jesus, and I've looked at that, and I think it's spurious. But I asked the 11, and only one had seen the side of Jesus, and none of the others had seen him at all, though all of them did attest to regularly experiencing him in some way. Apostles set up structures, and that all the apostles were in agreement that they had set up stuff along the way to help get the job done. I can't see the next word. What, can someone tell me what that is after set up structures?
Vision.
Vision, yeah. So vision, apostles get a vision, and it's a vision for the lost. It's a vision for areas, a vision for a people group, and it is hard to shake that vision out of them till it's achieved. Then, of course, there's suffering, and every one of those apostles had suffered in some way. Most have not suffered through persecution, but hunger, threats, team issues, psychological stress, sickness. Those are very common themes across those 11 people that I interviewed. And then I came to some unexpected or standout kind of themes. And I mentioned the environment just before, and actually that bit initially came up in interviews. If we're looking to discern apostles, particularly female apostles, we need to be in the right environment. Classroom is not the right environment. You will not get optimal discernment in a classroom. We need to have people out in the field doing the stuff. Who's good at it, who has a natural inclination, who really, really, really doesn't want to do it. So in our internship, I believe someone who is an apostle will attract money, not because, not to buy the mansion and the Mercedes Benz, but to get the job done. And so for us, raising money has become a clear indicator that a person has a gifting of some kind. And so we put them in an environment where they are required to raise money for themselves, not for me. And that is one thing that has worked for us. The next thing which stood out to me was the role of husbands and wives. Most people get married. So apostolic teams are quite often husbands and wives, and every now and then they are an Aquila and a Priscilla. And it's really interesting to think that one through. They think, that Aquila probably needs some support there to find his way in what is around the world, mostly a man's world. And we want to help Aquila to be content and to move forward in life, and to support the ministry that is primarily instigated by his wife. But husbands and wives as teams, that is so important. And in my experience with people in our organisation, so like Martin and Simone, that most of you know, with Ruby and Danny, Ruby's on the call. Husbands and wives working together is very important. Complementing one another, not being complementarian, but complementing one another, and growing together and getting the job done. The next thing that came out was the importance of influence, not authority. All of the literature is really quite fixated on these authoritative apostles, and I was wondering. Again, I think this connects back to that negative archetype. The apostles had authority and Jesus had authority, but that authority, I believe, was manifest in influence, not in Jesus bossing people around or ruling them. And same with the apostle. Paul's authority was gained through the hard-earned relationship. Anyway, this is, I think, something worthy of further discussion as well as we go along. But yeah, so if I'm looking for a female apostle, who was leading through influence? And many of you know my friend Indira, who interned with us, a young apostle, and she is an educated woman who leads through her awesome influence on people, where she's just so sensible and so kind. It's just really good. Anyway, and then last but certainly not least is intentionality. If we're going to discern female apostles, male apostles, we actually need to be very intentional about that to move people forward, to not just focus on ourselves. All right, now all of those themes are not in they're not in a particular structured order. So with the first list I gave you, they were in order of numerical support. These ones just came out, and they are not in any particular order, by the way, just so you know. All right, any comments or questions so far on my discussions with the apostles?
Hey, Jack, it's George here.
Hey,
Just a question about, did you have any data on sort of personality types or anything relating to the female apostles?
No. And look, and that is something I wanted to do. I think that would be an interesting exercise to get those 11 people together and make them do a Myers-Briggs and just see how similar and different we are, but and look to see if there is any patterns. Now one of the key weaknesses of my research is that my pool is small. So, mate, you could do your PhD on this, and you could work with 100 apostles from around the world and get some really validated results here.
You never know. You never know.
You never know, mate. You never know. Yeah. All right, I'll carry on. If there's any questions,
Viv, we can't hear you. I think Viv was trying to talk, but you're on mute.
Oh, okay.
At first I was joking. Oh, okay. So you're recruiting him to a WCIU PhD, Jack. That's good.
Of course.
And secondly, I was thinking, I think you'd come up with a 0 on that one, because it seems like apostles come from all sorts of backgrounds and character and personalities. So it might be tricky to plan on the whole research and come up with a 0. Yeah. Anyway, that's just...
but I think it would be, again, a worthy experiment just to confirm that is actually so. I just look at the differences between my wife and myself, or like I'm a high extrovert, she's a high introvert. Boom, there's major differences right there. But again, a worthy to have a worthy cause to have a look at.
But do you have to study apostolic couples? Although single apostles, either men or women, but generally couples.
Yeah.
Jack, how do you think that the current culture of today is playing into this? The sort of the world is pushing a very liberal view of femininity. And my observation would be that in response, the church is withdrawing from women being people of strength. Do you see this playing into this research?
I don't know if I can answer your question, Annie, because I've been living in a cave for 15 years. No, really, like I've been living in a Muslim community. I don't watch the news. I have barely any contact with my culture at all. So a really interesting book to read is Barr's book, The Making of Biblical Womanhood. She's pretty hardcore anti-complementarian, and her thesis is that to shore up Christian values, the conservative churches, particularly like the Southern Baptists, they have taken on complementarianism to shore up against feminism and the values of the world. Yeah, and at one level, very understandably. But she allocates femininity under complementarianism becomes the cult of domesticity. So I think we need to find a way. And like I think a woman can be an apostle and still be very feminine. I mean, you look at the young women in my team; they are just lovely young women. From a male's perspective, I don't. Maybe in people's perceptions there would be a difference, but the reality is that the apostles I know are just ordinary people.
Yeah,
and they can be quite feminine.
Jack, could you say out of the 11 people you interviewed, how many were female versus male and how many were married versus single? It would just be interesting to know.
Sure, six were female and 5 were male. How many were married? I think I interviewed two unmarried.
3
unmarried. Thank you. Comes the voice of all knowledge. Okay, 3 unmarried.
It strikes me that you just might get different answers because of people's different experiences, especially if you're thinking about females based on just your what you found about husbands and wives. So you commented on that. Culturally, we would expect, in the Western Christian church, let's say, would expect the man to have the leading role and the wife to follow.
Yeah.
Probably a stereotype, but probably broadly true.
Yeah.
So then if you have a single female, have more freedom, but maybe less likely to be accepted. So it just strikes me that the experience is very different as a single female wanting to work apostolically versus a married female wanting to work apostolically. Both have their different challenges in being accepted and having that calling recognized. But I think, would be interesting. You probably haven't got enough or maybe you do have enough data to kind of compare, but I think there would be some interesting differences.
Well, as I've said several times, my pool is kind of small, but a number of the women noted that female apostles have a, quote, a harder row to hoe, primarily because they are not accepted. However, what is interesting to note is who's doing the non-acceptance? Who is not accepting them? It's Christendom. Like in my experience out on the field, and this came out in one of the interviews which you and I talked about already, is that on the field, the pagans don't give a rip. They don't care who it is. Like the person is there, God has sent them there, and God gives them grace. So Esther, who I interviewed, so code name for the interview, she was talking about, men, we need men apostles because men can work with the old Muslim man and rah. And then she paused mid-sentence and she said, hold on, That's not right. In my, you know, she started working apostolically in a village by herself. No team, just us patting her on the back once a week. And then she's gone into this village, and the Muslim men defer to her when they're doing the DBS. They ask her to pray, and you know, it's not what you expect. So again, the rejection typically is not from the pagans, because they don't care, because this is something new, and planting very interesting DNA into that culture for the future, I think. But the rejection can family come from Christians. That is seems to be pretty much certain. If not rejection, certainly
being squashed,
or just what's the word? Ignored, not taken seriously. I think those things, you know, from what I've heard, those things happen. One of my respondents, one of the interviews talked about was leaving to the field as a single female, and her pastor and a visiting preacher conspired together to take her down during the farewell prayer. It's like, because she was a single female. However, God in his kindness intervened. So the visiting pastor went to pray. He started praying, and the Holy Ghost fell on him, and he started prophesying how God had called her and how God had led her, and God would support her. And that prophecy actually stood with her for a long time in her ministry to hold her up. You know, so those interviews were very, very moving for me. Sorry, Viv.
So the women apostles face extra barriers, but because apostles are barrier breakers, they break through the barriers.
Yeah, I think so. And if they can't break through the barriers at home, well, it doesn't matter. The gift's not about being at home. The gift is about being out on the field. So, you know, out on the field, they just do what they do.
Hey, can I add something?
Sure.
I just wondered, your unexpected findings was that husbands and wives actually can encourage each other in it, in being apostolic, but the single person then the single female then finds themselves not as encouraged in that regard, because there isn't the husband or wife backing up. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not where I was going with that, but that may well be true, but that's not where I was going. Where I was going with husbands and wives is that husbands are roles working apostolically together. That is key and very important, particularly in regards to when you've got a Priscilla and an Aquila.
Okay.
Yeah. So you experienced this yourself when your beloved husband went into burnout, and you were leading for nearly 2 years, and you were thrust to the forefront, you know, and that making each other, encouraging one another and taking the role and working together, you know, was very important at that time, I remember. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
If you haven't worked out, that's my wife, by the way. Okay, good. All right, next. Okay.
One more question here.
Yeah. Okay.
Authority. A lot of the apostles I know have pretty strong authority in the way they structure the work, the multiplication of the work, the intensity of the training. They're not authoritarian, but exercise strong authority. Later, as the people develop, they're able to move to leading by influence. So I wonder if it's a double whammy here.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I've done exactly what you've just said in my own ministry. I guess when I'm saying authority in this context. I'm really referring to the negative use of authority, like as in ruling people. If we want to, I think we can be authoritative, but we don't want to be authoritarian. So I'm probably here referring to the dangers of authoritarianism. Yeah. But I will cut out that quote and put it in my thesis. Thanks very much. All right. So how do we integrate all this? So I've ended up now with 38 themes in discerning female apostles from 3 sources. How do we do it? How do we make this work? And I think, well, the easy way, if we're looking for an easy way, is we want to integrate that through story. The story of a particular disciple, male or female, who may or may not be a budding apostle. So I've written here, apostles and disciples can discern apostleship through a story that naturally integrates the discerning themes well. The more themes apparent, the more likely it is one has discerned an apostle. Let me just read you something. Hold on. Okay, are we on full screen now? Can everyone see me? Yes.
We can see the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. I don't want the PowerPoint. There we are.
Okay, now we only see you.
Okay, good. All right. So let me read you a story. Can I share a handout through the chat? Is that possible?
Yep. You
Chat.
click on the plus sign to the left of the chat box and then choose file.
No, now it's trying to give me a screenshot. No, it's trying to give me a screenshot.
Can you find the chat at the bottom of your screen? Click on chat, and then right at the bottom there's a box where you can tap here to chat or tap a message to reply, and then to the left of that there's a little circle with a plus on.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sending you out a little handout now, and you can see the 3 categories of themes. And just for convenience sake, for this exercise, I have numbered them. So let me read you a couple of stories that will help you. So what I'm doing is as I'm looking at somebody's story, and I've got these permission to do these stories. As I read the story, I'm thinking about the 38 themes and even marking them along the way. So here we go. Listen to this. It's July 2017. Jack was at the Mission Summit in Chiang Mai, a time away with the like-minded. Excellent food, some refreshing, a pool, and even the old prophet was there. Nice. It was lunchtime. The tiny redhead in front of him in the lunch queue had an Aussie accent. That was clear as she talked to the woman in front of her. She looked about 13. Jack said hello and found out that she, Mia, was actually in her 20s. They had lunch together. A chat revealed that Mia had strong foundations. 1. With a strong professional and Christian family, 36. She demonstrated good initiative to come to Thailand from Sydney to co-lead the Summit's children's program, 2, 13. Mia had done some Bible school and different types of ministry back in Sydney, 10, 11. Jack warmed to Mia as she talked about hiking alone for days on end alone, 3. She seemed like a solid kid. What was her goal in coming? Mia said she was asking ministry leaders in Thailand for an internship, but none would have her. 12. Jack wasted no time. Crikey, mate, come do one with us. 15, 16, 34. He then went on to explain that his internships were helping people to become church planters in his Muslim majority country. Mia gave immediate buy-in. 12. Planting churches had instant appeal. 8 and 4. It seemed to Jack at the time that she hadn't thought of that before, even though her call to serve was strong. 26, 27, since a small child. The applications committee and a friend asked Mia, 10, 5, to finish her nursing degree before they would process her application. A few years passed. Jack and Mia would share messages a few times a year, touching base, preparing for the internship. On arrival, Mia was immediately taken to a village where the team settled in a shack. 14. They talked and trained around the campfire at night. By day, they hiked and canoed. Jack, fat and slow up the mountain, made Mia repeat the red thread narrative over and over again while he caught his breath. 18. They made their way into families and shared Jesus as they could, prayed for the sick as often as they could, and even distributed literature. 18. 9. After some time, Jack noted that Mia had a freakishly large vocabulary in the national language. She dressed as requested, like a respectable Muslim woman. 17. Jack had to return to Australia, so Mia went to work with Indira. Indira previously interned with Jack. She is a budding apostle. So now Mia had another mentor to deal with. 20. The synergy was tangible. Soon exciting testimonies of miracles came pouring over WhatsApp. 19. Indira had a social program running as a platform into the community, and Mia added to that, providing primary health care to the poorly serviced village. 30. Their work was progressing well. They needed more team members. They recruited Mara to assist them. 34. They saw her willingness to serve, but did not see till too late that unresolved trauma had left Mara damaged. 35. Her foundations were poor, but like the poor house on dry sand, she looked good. The stress brought by Mara was terrible. Too much time later, they asked her to leave the team, and she still continued to give them grief. 31. 38. In all this, Jack continued to encourage. He'd ridden this rodeo many times and had the hoof-shaped bruises to prove it. Keep moving forward in the love of God, he said. In all this, it was now clear to Jack. He knew again in his spirit that the Lord had entrusted him with another apostle. Awesome. He explained it to Mia, what it meant, what it didn't mean. No need to get a big head, just do the job. 22, 23, 24. And since then, she has been doing just that. Okay. Again, here's here's one last story. It's called Bill. Ben, a mission leader, asked Dr. Bill Smith to provide CPM training to a Southeast Asia team that was struggling. After 5 years in their Muslim community, there was no CPM, 14, 13, 12, 11. They were all discouraged, and their team leader, Jack, was displaying symptoms of burnout. There was talk of a return to Australia. Despite the discouragement and burnout, Bill had reason to hope for this team and its leaders. 17. Their foundations were good. 1. Jack had seen Jesus twice at 9 and 18, but only momentarily. 28. Jack and Usher had heard from God at 18 that they were to be church planters, in Jack's words, but God had said apostle. Jack learned quickly that even in Pentecostal circles, one does not blithely claim apostleship. He and Usher just ran with the church planting story. 8, 22, 23, 24. Life was not kind to Jack and Usher, with the loss of several babies, but they pressed on to be prepared as they could for service. They did Bible school, cross-cultural training. 18. They did stints in 3 Southeast Asian nations. 19, 29. They demonstrated good pioneering and leadership. 2, 3, 5, 6. Despite the lack of a CPM, the team functioned well and they seemed to enjoy one another. They had experimented plenty and made lots of resources. They had done a secretive but large and bold DVD distribution. 7. Perhaps it was because of their military backgrounds or because of their fairly blunt ways of speaking. Whatever it was, Jack, Bill, and Usher got along well. Emails, another visit. Then Bill offered them an hour a week over Skype to mentor them and talk them through issues. 15, 16, 20. This love and trust with Bill has been very significant in Jack and Usher's life and walk with Jesus. He gave them time. 21. Okay. So I have endeavored to integrate not endeavored, I have integrated themes into narrative. I have tried to work with what I have with people as they come and identify where they're at. Now, we could probably make that a checkbox. I have an idea of how to present that to help people, mentors, like old players like you guys. That would be helpful. And I think that's probably the most effective way. It's taking the time to hear someone's story and to observe them and to do it. So, you know, and that observation, you know, if you've got people in an apostolic environment, it's so much easier. But if they're an 18-year-old at uni, it may take more time to see those things. Are there any questions about my integration of into a story?
I thought it was really great, actually, because it brings to life the themes that you've identified and shows that they are accurate. I have a question about the PDF that you sent. So your number 35 is called Wounded Women. I'm presuming that's not a qualification for apostleship, but what did you mean by that?
Yeah, sorry. That is one of the themes that come up fairly regularly. But look, I think in terms of apostleship, where people just get hurt, you know, both men and women. But I think particularly women, as you said, is a harder row to hoe. So, you know, my own experience at 18, having just heard from God about this, took it to my mentor, and I've told you this story before. You know, he says, "Well, Jack, apostles are pretty special. Undercurrent, you're not special. Don't worry about it. This is not you." You know, and so, you know, and after that, I didn't share that with anyone. You know, it's only with Asha and I, we just kept that to ourselves. And it's only in the last few years that we've been pretty open about it. You know, and I think with women, it's even harder because, you know, you're only a girl. What would you know? I mean, I think, you know, I think that's the attitude. I mean, one of the women I interviewed, you know, planted a dynamic church, and she's got all these Western pastors coming in telling her how she's doing it wrong. You know, have no clue about living in a foreign culture. You know, and you're doing it wrong. I wouldn't do it like that. No. But the fact is, it ended up being successful. It's still successful and functioning, has produced other churches. Yes. So yeah, hurt. Yeah. But yeah, no, it is not a requirement, but it'll probably happen. Okay. Ririn, you have a question? Let me just look that up. Those of you who don't know, Ririn interned with us some time ago and is now starting a team chat. Okay, Ririn's question is, does a young apostle immediately know about her own calling as an apostle, or should someone confirm, should there be confirmation from others? Ririn, that's a very good question. And look, among the people I interviewed, there were people who immediately. So there's a man my age called Jehu. I interviewed him, and he, at 20 years old, knew what God had called him to do as an apostle, and he got started. I mean, now remember, I say he was an apostle, but, you know, like there's baby apostle, youth apostle, old man apostle, you know, and obviously, you know, when you're young, you're not going to be super effective because you're young and still finding your way, but an apostle nevertheless. So there's people like that. but there's other people that I interviewed, you know, one couple after 12 years of pioneering in a very difficult place, after 12 years, they said, oh, we're apostles. It was like ting, plong, you know, in Indonesian. So, yeah, it may make time. And in fact, most people, it took time. Like one of the people interviewed has been working apostolically for a long time, and only declared their apostleship at the end of my interview. They were doing the job. Yeah. Yeah. Ririn, apakah saya sudah menjawab pertanyaannya?
Ya, makasih. Thank you, Mak.
Yeah. Okay, well, now comes the time where I want to get your feedback. Hold on, just going to move this. I'm sorry. I wish I... Okay, we're back to the slides again, everybody. Yep. Okay, awesome. All right, so ultimately, with some pretty good criteria, which I think we've got, we can discern people's apostleship, or begin to discern people's apostleship through their story. And we use these 38 themes in discerning female apostleship as markers, as highlighters, as chapter headings along the way. So as part of the thesis, we're asked to make further recommendations, and well, I've made some general ones that we need more research on training, developing of apostles, prophets, and evangelists. I think that's a given. I think we also need to be working intentionally to change perceptions by having people read better books about women in ministry. Let me give you an absolutely infuriating example. There is a Southern Baptist woman missionary by the name of Lottie Moon, who, if you've read about it, she went as a fairly young thing to the mission field. Had stayed there a long time, and she turned into one of those old skirt-wearing battle axe missionaries. Loved Jesus and just wanted to get the job done, and she fought the men in her organization to preach the gospel. And eventually, the way that she worked that out was to go into a faraway community where there were no men from her organization, so she could do just that. She preached the gospel, she had planted churches, she trained people, and she did apostolic work. In fact, one author said she had, like at that time, had the biggest work among the Southern Baptists in China. Awesome woman, probably quite a scary woman as well. But you know, but here is this apostolic woman, and then authors like Barr, who have been very helpful for me, they show that with the modern complementarian type approach, the leadership of women in history has been obfuscated. And if you go onto the World Outreach if you go onto the Southern Baptist website, they've got a page dedicated to Lottie Moon, because Lottie Moon set up this fund, a Christmas fund, you know, and Southern Baptists, they have this culture where it's an awesome thing, where a few days before Christmas, they raise money for missions. And, you know, Lottie Moon started this, and so they've kept her name on it. But on the page, they talk about Lottie Moon being a strong woman who shared her faith, but nothing about evangelism, nothing about church planting. And then a big section of her page is her tea cake recipe. Like, I read that, and what I read was, we've put her in the box. She's in the right place. She did some good things, but she was famous for her tea cakes, not her church planting, and I just read that and I thought, what a dishonor. And so I would really like to see like a books by Lottie Moon. Okay, let's chuck in the apostle word while we're talking about her. Let's put in the evangelist word, the church planter word, because very often what women have done in history has been obfuscated by male authors, unintentionally and sometimes quite intentionally. So yeah. Anyway, so that's, I have a lot more recommendations, but you probably don't want to hear them. But I want to hear from you. Having heard my presentation, having heard I guess it's a tool I've created. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I've made something that can be used to help people in their discernment process. What are your recommendations, comments, and feedback?
I've got a couple of thoughts about how to turn the 38 themes into a checklist.
Sure.
So the first thing is a question, and I haven't had time to kind of analyze the lists, the 3 lists together, but are those 38 themes all mutually exclusive, or could you combine them to make a shorter list?
You could. And
so I think
initially,
that would be a really helpful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Initially that's what I did, but I thought, I really wanted to be more explicit. But yeah, I think, yeah, because there is significant overlap with many of those. Like for example, when I did it first, like under apostleship is a growing process, and that's probably the biggest category. Yeah, and you could put people's trainings and things like that. Yeah. Anyway, keep going with your idea.
I think so, and also the themes, because they're themes, they're not all of the same type. So I wonder if it would be helpful to separate out those things. I'll be able to articulate this better tomorrow. I'm just kind of thinking on the spot, but it might be helpful to separate out those themes which are related to the person and their inner self and their life experience from those which are external. So, because there are various things that, some of the themes are to do with how people are perceived and how they're treated within their culture. And that sort of brings me on to my point B, which is that as a checklist, cultures change. There are different cultures around the world. Maybe there'll be cultures where women are, matriarchal societies, let's say.
Yep.
Maybe not many of them, but there may be some. So
yeah, the Minangkabau, for example.
So I think my point is that if you're making a helpful checklist, then to make it universal, it would be helpful to separate out those things which are maybe cultural, or those. What would be particularly helpful would be to say, okay, these 10 are a must, and you have to tick these 10, or maybe you think there are 5, or there's got to be these, and then there are the might haves, and then there are the possibly will tick this box as well.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're not all equal. So they're not all equal.
No, they're not.
They're not all universal in terms of experience, and they're not all equal in terms of importance. I think those are my 2 points. And then if you could make the 38 more like a 15, it would be easier to use for people who want to discern female apostles or apostles in general.
Yeah. Yeah, but which ones? Like I thought, as I said, in one of the iterations of my thesis, I did cut that first group down. I cut it actually down to 5.
Mhm.
But then I thought, that's not really, in terms of explanation, there's not enough detail, and so you'd have to have dot points underneath that as well. So in the end, I just left them. Yeah, but yeah,
Sure.
good thing. Yeah, good suggestions though. Thank you.
So Jack, this is the piece on the academic process where people doing their PhD, they sit for about a year in complete confusion because they can't move from having some raw data to actually creating a theory, a thesis or something. Is how do you take those little themes and actually turn them into a theoretical model? In some ways, you don't have enough data. Since it's an exploratory study, you've used a few interviews, a few case studies, etc. It's not quite enough data to justify doing that. But Arabella's asking, is there some way to take it one step further, which is probably a reasonable question.
Yeah. I mean, I can work on that, and I mean, I could go back to that original. What I said. I mean, I can try and just cut them down into related themes, and come up with a smaller list.
Jack, my feedback is I love that this gives a framework for seeing the person, but I think like seeing a future apostle. But I also I think it would be really interesting to look at how how this research could help shape the environment that fosters the apostle. So to maybe like a both and, because I think in all the environments I've been in, there is very few people that are looking at teenagers and thinking about apostles, or young adults, and having been in your environment, I think it's like the way you see it is quite astounding. So how can you take this, and it's like a checklist that we look at the person, but also like how can we use this to train the trainers, or to look at it. So
one of the challenges in my recommendations and also in my book is that churches endeavor to set up those structures that can do that, so like setting up a prophetic structure, setting up a evangelistic structure, even an apostolic structure, and that I think a few churches are experimenting with the prophetic, but I don't know anyone who's doing that with evangelism and with the apostolic. But like it just would require a high level of intentionality and risk taking, I think, to set up something and give it a go. Say, make it easy on yourself, like I always do, and say, everything I'm doing is an experiment.
And then my second thought would be just how to raise I think how to take an apostle and make it seen as like a how do you lift the profile, or how do you make your definition of apostle the working model? Like what's the process to I guess making like the fivefold, not the four and and the four and the special people kind of model.
Look, I think what we're bumping into is that archetype, and people, we have this in our Pentecostal circles. One of the people I interviewed said the apostle is shiny. And that's I think that's a very accurate perception. Like that's right. It's just the shiny celebrity. And look, we need to bring in cultural change, which never happens quickly. And we need, so that's what I'm saying. If we can promote it with good teaching, promoting the people we know who are working apostolically. You know, think back to the summit. Viv, we just got a new international director with this awesome, our former director is this awesome former Assemblies of God pastor. Mate, he can preach a storm. He is awesome preaching. But we got the new guy come in. He's pretty young, and he's an apostle, and his preaching is pretty damn flat. You know, you know, like it was, you know, it was good, but it didn't have the razzle dazzle. You know, and you know, I'm a Pentecostal. I like a bit of razzle dazzle. You know, that's my culture. But you know, so yeah, I think just working to promote but then pointing to people, like saying, look at Lorraine. Look at Lorraine. She's doing this awesome apostolic work. Look at Arabella. Look at, you know, look at India. Look at old Viv over there, plodding on in his 70s. You know, like we can point out that. One thing I discussed with one person in the interview was that the reality that in-person apostles are very unimpressive people. You know, they're very normal people. Very normal people. Hold on, and sorry, someone's got a question. Ruby. Ruby.
Yeah, Ririn got asked first. She has a question on the chat box. Maybe you can address her, and then I can go next.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Ririn, you had another question? Ririn, ada pertanyaan lagi?
Nope.
No. She's right, Ruby. We answered her question before.
Okay. All right. Okay. Since the purpose of the thesis is identifying female apostles and then growing them, do you intend to start probably a network where when one is identified, they can link with this network of apostles who can mentor them, like a go-to person? Because, you know, like in our context, when you start calling yourself an apostle, you eyebrows will rise, and you know, that it is not a healthy environment for the apostle to grow. But if they have a place where they can be safe to grow and to make mistakes, then we will be able to help them flourish.
Yeah. Look, I'm very cautious, Ruby, and I always advise the young apostles, you know, don't put it on your business card, don't put it on your Facebook, don't even write it in your Bible, but you just keep moving forward and do the job. And you know, at some point people will acknowledge the gift. But you know, I think us, you know, I'm not as old as Viv, but you know, like I am considered an old guy where I live. You know, like where I live, people my age are getting ready to die. You know, hi Danny, and you know, we really need to be affirming. And what was the great joy for me in doing the interviews was I saw that I directly influenced 3 women to accept the apostolic mantle. I don't want to use the word title, but you know, like I had influenced 3 of them through my affirmation of their gifting to say, yes, I am an apostle. And I think that's really, really important, really, really important. So we can, you know, we as leaders, and I know you and Danny are awesome leaders, producing hundreds of people for the field, that, you know, we find those people and we say, look, I see an apostolic gifting on you. You're still young, stay humble. My job is to, you know, in my thesis, I talk about going in for an apostolic pruning with Dr. Bill Smith. You know, I'll have a coffee with Bill and Bill would get out the shears and give me a good pruning on what I've been doing right and what I've been doing wrong. So I think that's very important in our role as older people, particularly older apostles.
Yeah. Follow up.
But can I just say, I think, Ruby, your idea of some sort of a network, maybe even within our own organisation, where ladies, maybe ladies, particularly who are doing the apostolic, maybe don't call themselves apostles or do, depending on their situation and who they are, and maybe there is a space for some sort of I don't know, once a month kind of getting together on, and they have to be on Zoom, but yeah, I don't know, like that. I thought I like that idea because that would encourage women to grow and to be bolder and Anyway, I liked it. Sorry, I just wanted to say that.
No, it's a really good idea, and I didn't address it. So I think that would be great. And I think if we have a network, we can also push our women and our men along in the network. So at the moment, here in Indonesia, we have 3 teams who are all women. And Asha and I've had a hand in mentoring and setting those things up. And I think, okay, because the majority of missionaries are women, all women teams is highly appropriate. But networking those leaders together, Ruby, is a really good idea. And maybe we need to have another chat soon about how to make that happen.
Yeah. I've been listening. I've been here listening, and I have 3 things. 3 things. 2 are kind of silly, but one is a bit. Well, the first one is, you are putting us in trouble, Jack. I'm a pastor. If Ruby will start calling herself an apostle, I might,
Yeah, but
we'll have all sorts of trouble in World Outreach. And all these women will rise up and say they're apostles, and we're just pastors, So anyway,
second.
Here in the Philippines, we have we call our grandchildren apo. Grandchildren apo. So the term apostolic has a different meaning when like grandparents are taking care of their grandchildren. They're doing apostolic ministry. They're taking care of their apo. So it's sort of a joke that kinds of minimizes the tension if people starts calling themselves apostles. And so that joke kind of comes out because it's something very, as you all know, it's a very delicate or very how do you call it? It's not well accepted.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's international.
But in Burkina, one of the fastest growing churches, the fastest growing churches, is led by a pastor, Pastor Karambiri. He started out as an evangelist. In fact, he did not go to Bible school. It was later on that he went to do studies, but he started out as an intercessor and then started evangelizing. And the Lord just anointed him and then started to move. He started to move in signs and wonders. He started to pastor his church. The church grew to about 10,000 and they have several outreaches. And in the services, he would be prophesying, declaring, and most of them are spot on. So in the fivefold ministry, they're saying that the apostle touches the other ministries, the other gifts.
Yep.
teacher, pastor. Yeah. So he functions in all five. And so people were encouraging him, especially in Africa, they're very high in titles. Why don't you declare yourself an apostle? But he said, no, call me brother. In fact, even when they make posters, if he's a guest speaker, he wants to be called brother.
Yeah.
Because he knows the implication that when he starts saying that, all the other outreaches, because in the churches that he planted, the people that he appointed as leaders started functioning also, like in the apostolic.
Yeah.
And he just did not want people just going around calling themselves apostles.
Yeah.
Very different from Ghana. Ghana, everybody calls themselves an apostle, and in Nigeria. So it's a very,
Yeah.
So, and that's for men. And now your thesis is about apostolic women. So if we start talking about this, for example, in world outreach, what would be, you think, the impact, especially with our growing MPs in Africa and also here in Asia?
Yeah, I think, well, as you know, and we heard at the summit, the World Outreach is focused on encouraging women in all kinds of ministry. So we and knowing Ben fairly well, I think that will never change. However, I think with our growing number of majority world people joining World Outreach, I think we'll probably get significant pushback over female apostles, because a lot of people are still, they've been educated by Bible schools founded by Westerners, and so we're dealing with the same issues across the board. So yeah, I think there will be, if we were to, if my wife was suddenly to have an apostle's badge and Ruby was to wear hers, it would probably ruffle some feathers and upset people. But I think we can do this incrementally to push it along. Like say, like in your school, you teach it. And and I'm sure among your many graduates, you have a number of women who are functioning apostolically, who may or may not be apostles, and you could point them out as role models and say, "See that woman? She is an apostle." And by you and Ruby as the key people there, using your influence to change culture, I think that could happen.
We actually do. We actually do encourage. We tell them you're functioning in the apostolic, because many of the workers, like in World Outreach, many workers are women. Many church planters are women.
Yeah,
we're looking for the men.
Always looking for the men.
That's why I wanted to get your input, because at least I have somebody to blame if somebody goes off. It's Jack.
Yeah, blame me. Yeah, that Jack, he's trouble. He's trouble. We've ascertained that for a long time.
No, because it's true. We have a lot of workers, single women who are church planters. They have very great work among the Muslims and Buddhists,
Hindus.
and Hindus, and they're doing apostolic work. But to brand them or to give them that title might even be detrimental to their ministry, because
I think, can I add to that? I think the apostle works often as as a foundation underneath, covered over by all the things that are being built, like they go under. So therefore, often the apostle is not someone who wants to actually stand out and say, I'm an apostle and look what I'm doing. And I think if we teach that humility and the servant nature of an apostle that is underneath, holding up and building up, rather than over above, maybe that will help solve some of that possible Africa issues, because, you know, we're coming in as not apostles with our name tags on, but apostles who come in as a servant underneath, who raises the people up, and leading but servant like, rather than up the front as a razzle dazzle. Oh, that's my thought.
Thank you.
Yeah, just last thought on that, Danny. I do wonder though, do we get to the point where we face the detractors and the people who are giving us pushback, and we just do it anyway? You know, at Nations we learned that a missionary is an instrument of directed cultural change. So let's bring the change with a hammer. You know, I think that, I mean, there is a time for that. I mean, I think, you know, where we just have to go and say, actually, this is what the Bible teaches. These are our convictions, and then, yeah.
No, it's good. It's good that you have the paper. So again, I think everybody will agree. It's you. It was your paper. So it's we're just supporting.
Mate, it would be my honor to wear that blame. It would be my honor.
Anyway, by the way, these are palm trees, not what you're thinking of. These are
Palm trees.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, does anyone have any other questions or comments before we close up then? Thanks very much, guys. Viv, you want to make any last minute comments?
Yeah, awesome, Jack. Awesome. Your exploration is an exploration, and it lays a foundation. If a cluster of women were to form into a network, it lays a foundation that network could start with, and then as women, because you couldn't answer the question, is there something different for women? In the end, it didn't come out. But maybe as a cluster of women in the apostolate, they might be able to figure that out, starting with what you've started and moving forward. So I think you've laid a good foundation here for some development of a theory, Jack. And that's what you set out to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
You move from discernment to development, but the centralization on discernment is very significant. It's a very complex dynamic, so you've captured the complexity, which is difficult for someone to do with research. You've done that. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks. Okay, any last minute comments from anyone else? And we'll go and have morning tea. I believe Viv's putting on the wine and cheese for us. So
my wife's got it all. I can smell it.
All right. Well, let me pray. Father, we are grateful to be together, grateful to talk about the good things of God. And I pray that you'd help me to finish off this thesis, the writing, and get it done well. We thank you for this presentation that went well. And we thank you for your grace. So, Lord, we pray for a release, a deluge of female apostles, that you'd help us to descend them well, to grow them well, and to be an honor to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much, guys. God bless.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Turn that off.